Public Q&A presents AskReddit question. Ex-developers of games, what is a secret people should know about? Everything is a secret loading screen. One game which had seamless loading that I loved and didn't even realize how revolutionary it was at the time was Jak and Daxter. The precursor legacy. There was no loading screens. The camera would automatically position itself in a way that you couldn't see the area behind you being unloaded or the area ahead of you being loaded when you were going into a new area. Thing is, it never feels like they are obstructing your view. You will only notice it once you know what to look for and where. Only loading screen I can think of is when loading your save file. This was all done on PS2. Just bought the trilogy on the PS Store and tempted to play the first again now. Missed those platforms, but with the new Crash Bandicoot coming they are finally making a comeback. Is it on the PS4? Crash is yes. You can buy all for Jak games on the PlayStation Store for PS4. The Jak games are on PS4 as PS2 classics, and you buy the trilogy plus Jak X in a bundle. Interestingly, there are unlockables that you should be impossible to get now, but the porters added contingencies. If you want to unlock the Daxter unlocks only available if you connected a PS2 running Jak X with a PSP running Daxter. You just need a save file from the Nathan Drake collection on the PS4 hard drive. If you want to unlock Ratchet as a secret driver in multiplayer, needed a save file from Ratchet. Deadlocked, which isn't on PS4, you need a save file from Ratchet and Clank PS4. Yeah, Jak 2 had airlocks at the entrance gates to the hub world, so you could walk around and practice your jumping while the game loaded. Or there'd be elevator rides, or things like that to disguise loading. The city in Jak 2 was also designed super twisty on purpose to help dump and load assets. Honestly, that was a stroke of brilliance. It served a purpose on stage and behind the scenes. So much of the gameplay was built around twisting city streets in a way that learning to navigate through them was a rewarding part of gameplay. Tony Hawk's American Wasteland has Ed. The chat. No loading screens. Now grind along this extremely long boring hallway at a much slower pace than you can usually skate for a few minutes on the way to the next area. Got to admit the kiss gimmick had me hooked. Thank God I wised up before Project 8. They also had a contingency: if you were going quicker than the area would load, Jak would trip over. This was more common with the PS3 remastered trilogy release, but it was definitely in the originals. Even when you die, it just shows a black screen for a quarter of a second and that's it. Yup. That safety warning at the beginning of WII games, mandatory requirement for WII games, but the game is already loading while that's being displayed. On the contrary, I have made games with loading screens that don't actually load anything. Same. Instantly loading into a level just feels wrong and somehow cheap, whereas a quick fake loading screen is an opportunity to add some polish. Throw in a bar that fills up in a satisfying way, and a few randomies tips or lore tidbits, and you've got some good game feel going. Reminds me of how apparently ATMs have those clicky sounds to convince you they're doing the job properly and thoroughly, when in reality they've done it flawlessly and instantly, because when they made ATMs instant, way too many people were concerned it was getting numbers wrong. Also, all those double-checking your refund progress bars in tax prep software have to take as long as a naive person thinks a computer should take to run a simple calculation. Meanwhile, it's been updating instantly the whole time you've been filling out forms. I always look at that loading bar like, WTF, are you calculating? Taxes are basic math. We aren't running 4D hypercube income forecasts on my 401k here, bro. Really? I would prefer if the ATM just gave me my money. I have always been frustrated and anxious, especially if there's other people waiting to use it, and just want the money dispensed. Ugh. This was actually a problem encountered by Capcom when they were remaking Resident Evil on the GameCube. Because of the tricks they used to make the game backgrounds were often high-quality still images with some animations added, the GameCube could instantly load any area in the game. Playtesters didn't like it because the loading screen of the door was so iconic, and a good way to tell if the room was occupied with monsters. You'd hear a heartbeat if there were enemies inside that they added them back into the game. And then the randomized tips and lore go away before you can finish reading them. Car insurance quote websites and flight websites do the same. Their APIs fetch the price immediately, but people don't feel like it's working hard enough, so they stick in a loading spinner and have the results pop in randomly. Never trust elevators and slow opening doors animations. Except the secret loading screen, that's a bug. Portal games have some objections. Anything you can't see is actually invisible. It's called frustum culling. Anything the camera isn't pointing at also doesn't get rendered. For example, this also applies to reality. LPT. If you want to cross the road, one simple trick is to cross it with closed eyes to unload all cars at once. Subreddit outside is leaking. I don't know why this made me laugh so hard. This only works if there is no player in the car. BTW. Doesn't work. The cars are there. They are just not rendered. Someone studied philosophy. What happens if you turn your camera really fast? Does it just force to render really quickly then? Everything you see is rendered over and over again every frame. So it doesn't make a difference really. So everything I see in a game, that's being rendered around 144 times a second. 144 FPS. Most games try to do 60 FPS, but it can go higher, yeah. Is this why big MMOs were so tough on systems back in the day? Because unlike an SP and MP, you can't employ a trick like this with the same effect. It's the same. This is client-sided, so it's just QN optimization for the game to run better. However, servers do all calculations server-side to avoid cheating like moving, or jumping, or attacking. That means if you have players all over the map, all the map is loaded and its entities being calculated but not rendering though, the server doesn't render anything, unless this were the now cloud gaming options, but that's also different to Unmo. That makes more sense, and now I feel dumb for asking LOL. Why? You learn something. And learning is the opposite of dumb. Except if you're playing terribly programmed games, right? Some have such terrible performance that I wonder if they even use that technique. Edit. Fixed a typo. Someone can correct me. Bulletin. Most games made on engines like Unity and Unreal will have this as long as they don't have absurdly big objects, since this is made in engine level. True, but frustum culling is only half the solution. The other half is occlusion culling, which needs to be set up and turned on at least in Unity, which a lot of these bad, slow, terribly optimized games forget about. Occlusion culling turns off stuff that's in view, but obstructed entirely by something else, like an enemy behind a building, or a building behind a bigger building. Crisis Remastered. Except for Jodie in the shower in Beyond Two Souls, apparently. Someone unlocked the camera and found they rendered a full nude body without L Page knowing. Wasn't really a reason for that because the camera never showed it without hacking the game. Wasn't really a reason. You know the reason. They had the asset made, and it was loaded into memory, but it wasn't rendered in-game since the camera never showed it. Is it not more computationally intensive to repeatedly load and unload models like trees, and what have you, instead of keeping the immediate vicinity of certain radius loaded in the memory? I mean, if a character is repeatedly just looking left and right, that's for loads and unloads already right. The models are still in memory if they are expected to be in frequent use. What changes is which draw commands are sent to the GPU each frame, I think. Is it not more computationally intensive to repeatedly load and unload models like trees, and what have you? It isn't necessary to dump everything out of memory as soon as it gets out of view just to load it back from SSD or HDD whenever it reappears. Instead of keeping the immediate vicinity of certain radius loaded in the memory. We usually have more than enough of memory available, it's the whole rendering process that takes the bulk of time. Username checks out. Most employees are fired immediately after the game's release. Hey, don't make me scared. I just joined last month. Time to add a ton of little bugs that'll take a year after release to be fixed. Subreddit life prototypes right here. Bethesda prototypes. Repeat the same bugs every game so it's just part of the world building at that point. It's not broken, just quirky. It's got personality. Sure, that personality is a disorder, but we don't have to tell them that. Make sure you don't spend all your wage. You're going to need the buffer. Trust me. Especially if you're in AAA. Isn't that one a little logical? One doesn't keep paying a construction crew when the building is completed and doesn't require building anymore. It is, but it just doesn't seem that right to people who think game devs are long-term full-time employees and not just contract workers. If you want to be successful in the dev world, you always have to be applying for jobs even when you are working. Indeed, it's a special setup to have to search for your next job while on one. I agree. Welcome to construction. Well, a game development company doesn't stop making games though. And a construction company doesn't stop constructing buildings. I would wager that if they still needed the programmers for a next project, they AMD keep the ones they want employed. And construction companies stop building things all the time, lay off their employees because they don't have the choice, and rehire them as they can when contracts come back up. I think he meant that the construction company itself is firing the employees after they build their building. The QC department usually gets thrown under the bus by players, but almost all of them have no idea the amount of work these guys put in. It's crazy to me that QC isn't considered a crucial part of development by regular users. Deadlines are a really complicated affair, especially when talking about AAA games launched on consoles, not just PC. The patches need to be sent to Sony or Microsoft for testing, and as you can imagine, losing your slot because of delays fucks everything up. Most of the bugs a game ships with are known, and often have a Jira or other tracking system task that exists. But as shipping deadlines approach, some bugs won't get fixed because they are lower priority, the fix could cause other major issues, etc. I worked for a little while as a QA tester. Yep, we had a bug code they started using late in the development cycle called WNF, standing for will not fix. That meant the devs had seen the bug report for it, were aware of the issue and probably aware of what caused it, but it's minor enough that they aren't going to address it. They said it was because late in the development process they can't risk that a bug fix could cause a cascade of other bugs that they don't have time to sort out. So they stop fixing minor art or environment issues and stuff like that. I think it should also be noted that a year in QC can't possibly find even half the bugs a day in the hands of thousands of live players will find. This isn't a flaw with the QC process, it's just that more people are going to find the more obscure bugs faster. This is why test servers have become such an integral part of game development, especially for big games. Same reason Linux is so great. More pairs of eyes. Ah yes. Those friggin' checks. When I think about why I quit games, that was one of the main reasons. Having to sit and wait until 9 p.m. on a Saturday for the new build with a fix only for the new build to be crashed on launch. But why did it crash? No one knows, so you're stuck waiting around longer. Then when you finally do get that new build that doesn't crash on launch, you have to go through the whole checklist again. And cry because the original problem still has not been fixed. QC department equals quality control department. Yes, the people that test the game. Isn't QA equals quality assurance more used term? Depends. In most fields QA and QC are really different. One is focusing on improving processes and making sure mistakes won't happen going forward QA, and the other is focused on testing QC. In gaming both terms are usually interchangeable, but most of the time each studio has its own terms for what each team is focused on. As a QA and QC individual, thank you for understanding the difference between the two. 99% of people, including people in the profession, don't know the difference, and when it's explained to them they don't understand the difference. Quality assurance is a related but distinct area, usually involving anything with demanding or strict business protocols like sticking to phone scripts. Example: quality control for video game testing follows a lengthy checklist process to ensure they checked for all possible bugs. Quality assurance would be to audit those checklists and ensure the QC team is doing their job well. To be fair, quality control department are a joke in most AAA studios. Not because of the people working in quality control, those guys are usually hardworkers that do the best jobs possible. But with the current mentality of ship it now, fix it later in the AAA industry, quality control has been dealt a hand that gets rougher every year. Not only do they have to work insanely long hours, pretty common to see quality controls guys work 100 hours a week, they are massively underpaid, treated like garbage by a lot of people in the industry, and fired the second they're not needed. But hey, that's just business as usual in the AAA industry. Crunch, coercion, harassment, and a lot of other nasty stuff is just considered normal nowadays, at least for the higher-ups. I really love working in QA. It's a job I am good at. Okay, I don't have technical skills and I have never done automation, but I am a damn good functionality tester. But my first 3 years were in an external company where the boss was a narcissistic bully. He had the mentality that you owed him for the privilege of working for him. He'd belittle you, shout at you, and remind you that you are worthless and disposable, and would complain every other Friday that he felt he was paying you too much whilst you struggled to find enough money for dinner. The workplace was toxic and bred nepotism. We worked a lot of mobile projects, and if the managers didn't like you, you were thrown on the worst projects. Ever played Subway Surfers? Do that for 6 hours a day, for 2 months solid, while someone next to you is playing Oddworld because the nephew of the boss decided you looked at him funny. So I left, finally, only to go into another company with a boss that does the exact same thing. Mandatory crunch. I lived 2 hours away, and there were several times I didn't get home until 3 a.m., only to be forced back into the office for 6 a.m. I was running on pure desire to make sure the project was great, not for me, but for the users. He didn't care if you were sick, he didn't care if you'd broken your leg. He pays you, so you work. Bonuses were based on how many critical bugs you found. He made the first guy look like a fucking saint. 2 more years there and I was done. I hated QA, I hated the games industry. Fuck everyone and fuck video games. I just stopped caring about everything. People always ask me what the hardest bit about working QA is. It isn't the bugs, the technology. It isn't even the feeling you get when you realize you missed a critical, obvious bug that a user is now on a forum bitching about. It's not knowing when you're about to lose your job. It's knowing that no matter how much effort you put in, hours, care, dedication, how much you sacrifice, you're just a number, something disposable that can be replaced at a moment's notice. I feel for you. People come into the video game industry because it's their dream job. And management knows that. And they're going to exploit it. I can't count how often you see a PR post about crunch that basically says, if you don't want to crunch, you probably aren't that passionate about video games. Dev are treated like shit, but QA is treated 10 times as worst. The video game industry needs to unionize and fast. I mean, BioWare have been so used to having people break down from stress that they use the term stress casualty, which is a military term BTW, to describe them. Fuck the video game industry for what it does to the people who want to work in it. I now work for an indie dev who are really big on mental health and genuinely care about their staff. We don't have crunch, and if you work later than usual, you're scolded. I was once awake at 3 a.m. working on launch day, helping users troubleshoot a load of problems. The CEO piped up in the Discord and told me to go to bed, and the rest of the Discord joined in. It was humbling and wholesome. I have definitely found my love for video games and QA again, but I wouldn't have found it in a AAA studio. I feel bad for the kids coming up all excited to work for their dream companies. It's one of those never meet your heroes situations. My real wish is that dev teams listen to QA more. We're the guys playing your game for hours on end. We know what is boring and what UX works. Listen to us, damn it. It's knowing that no matter how much effort you put in, hours, care, dedication, how much you sacrifice, you're just a number, something disposable that can be replaced at a moment's notice. I don't work in the gaming industry, but where I am working now, it's a very similar culture. I loved doing what I was doing, but seeing people with no experience, or quite frankly, were shittier workers, getting better assignments and better pay over and over really turned me off to doing this work. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it's the only work I can do right now, and I am stuck in a rut trying to break into a new career. This is why Blizzard used to take a decade building games. Used to be one of the most solid studios, still good, but once Activision bought them, it slid downhill. I mean, while the quality of their game is still pretty good, we can't deny that Blizzard has been one of the forefather of shitty monetization practices. Diablo 3 and its infamous auction house. And Overwatch, which massively popularized the loot box concept. They're not the worst, but Activision Blizzard has been very careful of using the goodwill Blizzard built up to see how much they could get away with. Unlike studios like EA that went all in from the start. And let's not forget that they treat their employees like dog shit, and that their CEO is massively overpaid, even compared to other massively overpaid CEOs in the US. On the bright side, at least Activision Blizzard doesn't cover up abuse and sexual assault committed by their high-level employees, like Ubisoft. As far as we know. The guys that made Factorio have QC down to a science, and because of that, I'll buy their next game pretty much sight unseen. Could you imagine how trash most games would be without QA or QC? Players think the coders are gods, but don't realize how many iterations happen before a game is released. Most are overworked and underpaid. Ain't no secret. You go in thinking it's your stepping stone to being a part of your dream job. A select rare few get to be really involved with the world building, storyline, concepts, and fun stuff. Projects and tasks you're excited to be worked on are either short-lived, or end up getting scrapped in the actual release. IMO games that are actually fun don't always rake in the most dollar as much as you would think. These bigger companies are more worried about the next cash cow. A lot of your complaints are valid, shit gets scrapped, changed, not fixed due to lack of understanding on front end or aesthetic people that don't realistically understand what is doable within limits. Also just time and dollar. Investors want to get paid. A lot of the time there are really stupid compromises with dev and management. One of the managers showed us his online account for an MMO we worked on, and it was laughable how noob and ridiculously he played his character, and he was dead serious. Compare it to someone that's level 17, and lost somehow walking around in Ice-Crown Citadel asking for gold but not WoW. So a lot of decisions and suggestions are put in based on someone that just has their shiny management hat, and has more pull somehow than 10 hundreds of comments in our player community forums and surveys. Sucks. NDAs. NDA everywhere. There's even a proprietary signal pattern that displays discreetly on most of the screens in alpha products, so sharing a screenshot during the making or testing is a big no-no, as your machine or software will have its own unique code pattern on the screen that can be easily traced or tracked at the time and person using it. The culture is kind of dull and shitty unless you are lucky enough to get in big with a company that has lots of dollar, but even then it's a fine line. Your company gets too big. Everything from the complimentary beer on tap in the break room and free snack machines all get taken away, and the fun work culture is killed instantly, and everything gets tediously tracked, like how much time you spend working on things even get flagged for opening calculator, and it just becomes a shit toxic work culture with a high turnover rate, and then that department goes to shit, and they end up losing that branch or division or company when treating everyone right could have continued to produced money-making games. Investors and big executives don't fucking get this, hence we need younger people in leadership. There's still plenty of older buffoons that are just out of touch with what the gamers want and what reality can realistically do for them. You want to find an indie or successful company with few people, 5 to 100 people max, that's in the sweet spot of having their own freedom and independence and haven't gotten sucked into obeying the investor gods. The less intensive it is, and the smaller you can keep your company and make dollar, the better. It's really boring in the mobile side of shit. The games you work on are largely stupid cash cows of button-mashing games that I can't believe the consumer public is dumb enough to pay for. If you look around, a lot of the more interesting and fun games on Android are made by indie and just a single developer. Your button-mashing pay for points to play more bullshit P2W games are generally owned by a larger company. The Infinite Black was a beautiful mobile game made by 1 to 3 people until they sold and changed the game to something more P2W friendly to keep their investors happy. Not sure if the original dev got screwed or just had to make dollar. I mean, I would probably have done it too if the dollar was right. We all got to eat and pay bills. Never again. If technology gets better somehow to simplify making a 3D MMO of sorts, I would give it a try to go indie on my own, but just for fun. Projects and tasks you're excited to be worked on are either short-lived or end up getting scrapped in the actual release. Sometimes you have insane exceptions to this, like the Far Cry 2 wildfire propagation system, which was apparently the result of a single developer getting way too into simulating fire. Not only did it made it into the final release, but had to be artificially tuned down to exclude the possibility of burning the entire active map to the ground. During development, I often found myself laughing out loud because a small fire I started turned into complete chaos. Jean-Francois Levesque, the fire guy. Well, at least he had a safe outlet for his true passion, arson. So it's like most other development jobs, got it? Except you get paid less. I am genuinely sorry to hear all that. Sounds like you got well and truly put through the meat grinder. I am sorry the higher-ups and such seem to be uniformly assholes, and I am sorry that a medium I love, and that you've clearly worked so hard and has such a rotten core. I am just sorry. Wow. You are still with us. Thanks for being such a nice person. As long as you are here, why not like this video and subscribe to our channel? Also, you can press the bell icon, so you won't miss any future uploads.